Welcome to GreenSong Changemaker series. This is episode 5, and I'm your co-host Alexian, along with grandmother Elspeth. She'll be along in just a second. It's my pleasure to continue to stream this series. It's very important to get this out into the world and to share these thoughts and these ideas. As always, please click the share button. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, hit that little share button and share it with your friends and family and like-minded people. Of course, GreenSong is trying to grow their YouTube channel. So if you're on YouTube right now watching, please go ahead and like this video. That helps the algorithm so that it floats higher in the list and suggests it to other people that you don't even know. So just hit that like, and that will help us out a lot. Also, of course, subscribe to the channel and you'll see more videos like this. But if you're really into this, click that bell, ring our bell, because then you'll get the notifications and the ding, and it'll tell you when these live things are happening. Because, you know, like I said before, life happens and the ding goes off and you're like, oh yeah, I wanted to watch that. Again, this is the Changemaker series. We also want to remind you that there is an auction and you can make a donation simply by going to greensongfestival.com. That's greensongfestival.com. And now it is my pleasure to introduce someone that's been a friend for many, many, many decades, okay? And that is grandmother Elspeth.
Good evening, everybody, and I'm grandmother Elspeth. I'm here to bring you yet another session of Changemakers. This one has a particular cast to it. It's very special. Before I introduce our speaker and our musician, I want to give you a quote, and it's not a Pete Seeger quote. I can't remember where I got it. It says, we cannot change the past, but we can acknowledge it and learn from it and move forward together to create a tomorrow that today can only dream of. And let me bring to you Changemaker Sangoma Oludoye. She's going to talk about roadmaps to bridge building. Sangoma is a traditional Yoruba priestess of Obatala and ancestral custodian of the customs, traditions, codes of contact for a diversity of cultures. She is a sacred activist and a spiritual midwife. The descendant of 7 generations of root medicine people, the gifts of her ancestors in the Cherokee, Dogon, Bambara, and Yoruba tribes continue to manifest healing and wholeness for the wounded, for the downtrodden survivors of cultural amnesia. Really like that phrase, cultural amnesia. Sangoma sees her purposes are to nurture, tend, and be an advocate for the reconnection of humanity with the forces of nature. This session is going to be different in that Sangoma and her musician partner, Jonathan Santos, are going to do their work together as a complete, undivided expedition. I will be speaking to you somewhat after, but let us welcome Sangoma and Jonathan. Come and tell us how it is.
Awesome. Share Lafiani Santos. Zoom corner. How are you, West Coast?
I'm super blessed, super blessed. And how are you feeling?
Hey, you know, it was a rumble and a shake at the beginning of the week, but we're doing well. We're doing well. Anticipating and loving and embracing and opening ourselves for this Mercury go direct thing. It feels like, okay, Now we can make a clean break toward the end of the year. For a minute, it felt like quicksand and mud, but I'm happy to report that here as of late, we're really beginning to feel a little momentum come up underneath, and people coming up to their exhale moment, I think, is how it feels. Yeah. So
one exhale followed by another inhale. You know, what's that next breath gonna be?
it's so interesting. And, you know, not till this moment right here, we were talking on, you know, the Zoom calls now are so rapid and fast and daily. And somewhere between the Wild Darlings and Art of Mentoring, the young questions, the teenage questions, and I'm sure we'll cover a little bit of this evening, tools for particular groups of people that they can use. And we were being asked, what were some of the tools that make us feel safe? This teenager was asking. Mm-hmm. And I heard myself, unlike you, I don't do as much breath work as you, but I heard myself respond with that immediately. I said, you know, I have found that people who do yoga or Tai Chi or even creative visualization, they will always tell you to return and anchor in your breath, in your inhale and exhale. And and whether you can follow that up with your pause button, recognizing that maybe a trigger has been pushed, or you're startled, or you've gotten thrown off your game a little bit, the breath, just that in and out, will bring us back. But we're getting the cart ahead of the horse ahead of the cart, right? Or the cart ahead of the horse, because you're going to go through that, and I'm excited to do
definitely.
that.
Definitely. Yeah. But yeah, we have to remember to breathe. You know, we are here with great shift in the United States on a social level. And, you know, it's still revealing. It's still revealing even more, you know, like, oh, well, you know, it's a lot of tension. Everything is so close. But people have been feeling how they've been feeling, however they've been feeling. People have had their allegiances and their beliefs and their opinions for a long time. And so it is a time of shaking things up. It is a time where people are used to gathering with gratitude for Thanksgiving or thanks taken. And now the world is different. We're in a whole new time. The world, this is a whole new reality. And yes, the breath, absolutely. You know, just as we wake up, just as we go to sleep, one guarantee is that if we're here, we're breathing. And if we're here and we're breathing, we got to be intentional about getting the most out of our breath. But that's a drop that we'll come back and water the seed later. So what's next? Where are we gonna take? Where are we going with everybody?
Hey, you know, first things first, and so we have an invocation, and as we thought about that, you know, and we're going to talk just for a second before we actually get into it, because as we were sitting last night and just kind of running through the prep for this, you know, of course, the ancestors are always in my ear, and they're like, what makes you think that people now this removed from going to church every Sunday like you did? We were just talking about grandmother Elspeth's span of 90 years and how things have changed. And of course, if we said invocation, maybe even 20, 30 years ago, people would remember the opening prayer or the opening scripture in church because that's what people did. But now we have all types of spiritual practices that aren't in a set order of service, is what the program says in your church booklet. Is the order of service, and at the very beginning you come in with the opening prayer or the opening invocation. But an invocation, think about that word in itself, means that we are going to invoke something. And so just the level of what is being seen in this machine, which is you and I, and what you and I know is also present, which is all of our ancestors and all of the energies and all of the forces around us, is like that great calling together, that invocation, when all of those things gather in together, or we call them in, whether we call them in with a drum, or we call them in with this chime, or we call them in with bells, however you call it, it's a vibration that shifts where you were a minute ago in our opening chit chat, how you doing, how I'm doing, to a more sacred container that says, wow, like you say, we about to drop something in here. This container is going to get set, and we want to make sure that all of our witnesses, seen and unseen, are anchoring our conversation for these next 90 minutes or so. So invocation, you know, when people ask me, well, what, yeah, sacred activism, what does that, what does that encompass? Is that if that's what you do, and it's the act of making all things sacred. And in order to make the sacred or embrace the sacred or be present, and that's a word that we'll drop in the bucket we're going to come back to be present, not in the past or yet in the future, but present in the sacred, then we do. Whether you call in the 4 directions, the 4 clan chiefs, earth, air, fire, and water, whether you pour libation, which we're going to in a minute, to remember those who have gone on before us and that in a certain way certified and licensed and anchored us to even be able to speak to people tonight, because they taught us, we can then share with you this evening. So of course we're going to call their names, and again, that's different ways for different people. But why do we bother? Why do we bother? You know, that's the other question my ancestors asked us. Well, it's nice to explain about invocation and how to set a sacred space, but then some people who are just like that, get to business, you know, Leo or Aries, get on with it then, you know. They're ready to start with the first agenda item. They don't necessarily see a need to cross from one world, one dimension, one consciousness to another. But I guarantee you that in this place and time that we are going to, we're going to talk about a number of things this evening on our way to the new earth, on the way to the better world that we all know is possible. You would do well. You would do well to, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying you, to all of us, generally speaking, we would all do well to set a tone, to set a vibration, to set a certain frequency in which we hold certain conversations. There was an old, I guess it's an old teaching now, when I first started out, and it was called How to Keep the Ceremony in Your Everyday Life. And I explained this very point, that some people get up and figure out what clothes they're going to put on, what they're going to wear to work, and what they're going to eat for breakfast. And other people get up and water their plants and feed the birds and light a candle on the table before they ever move to the kitchen to decide about their coffee or their tea or whatever and whatever. So all that being said, we'll
that's how my days, that's how my rise and my routine starts.
And don't we find that it's better no matter where we've been in our dream time? There's not this like rush to catch the train kind of thing that some people have in the morning where they skip over parts. When we slow it down enough to just be present with spirit, however that is, a prayer, lighting a candle, going in the garden, doing some movement, some Tai Chi, however that is, you know, if you will develop that morning spirituality or that morning tending to one's own priesthood so that you can be taken that way. It's hard for people to be offended by you if you have set yourself in tone that way, to carry yourself through your day that way. Don't you think?
And so completely. And even in you mentioning, you know, the sacred, you are a priestess, a sacred activist. And that very much is the world of artistry and music and creativity. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we're sitting with all of ourselves from a full cup, and all of our support, our ancestors and our spiritual support when we're stepping out for people. And so for everybody that's here with us, you know, the times that we're in now, where the social tension and the transformation on the planet is so high, it would really benefit all of us, as Ia, you know, you're really laying out for us, is that we have to really, this is the deep check-in. We're entering the sacred spiritual space. So, you know, I'm holding on. I hope y'all out there are holding on.
Absolutely.
Take us, Ia, take us there.
Yeah. Well, it begins with water, and we got this nice little vessel the other day, and I saw it and I thought, oh, I like that. It's going to work well in some ceremonies. And so, you know, I say to everyone, whether it's that, you know, if you came up in my time, you might have seen some brothers on the corner with their 40 ounce pouring a liquid onto the ground, or you might see people do it at a grave, or I'm going to do it now. Water is going to be sprinkled here. And the reason, and I tell people that, is because what made it legal for us all to come and play in the earth school? Even though we haven't quite learned how to all play and get along together on the playground, we all got here because our mother's waters broke. And it is not any stretch of the imagination or coincidence that as you come into the world, there are christenings and there are baptisms, and it always involves water. So at the beginning of this, which again, some people might call pouring libation, but for us as Yorubas, then we always sprinkle water first and just say fresh water. We recognize water, which is, you know, beautiful when in a pond or a fishbowl, not so much when it comes in a tsunami or a hurricane. So as we do that and sprinkle our water, we are extremely respectful that we have fresh water, and water is our friend. And the other thing that a great chief that we're getting ready to call in here told us, water doesn't have any enemies, and it doesn't. Water can change the shape of rocks. Water can move in, under, freeze itself, come in rain, be mist, be snow, and the list is endless. So remember that about water when you're pouring water at the beginning of your vibration or ritual or whatever you're beginning. How about that? Begin with water. And then, of course, we say, Ona tutu, freshen the roads ahead of us. Ile tutu, freshen this house that we are vibrating and having this conversation in. And of course, freshen Egungun, Omitutu Egungun. And so Egungun, then our ancestral committee, which is where we're about to go next. As we open up to everything that is, traditionally we say, Olodumare Ajuba Bogbo Iku Olua, Tiyambalese Olodumare, Iba Ara Toro. Olodumare, all that is, source, God, goddess, however you want to put that in there. We praise you and we praise the chiefly dead that sit at your feet. And once we have said that, then we are in remembrance of my godfather, His Royal Highness Oba Osurgiman Efuntola Adefumi, who then left us in this wonderful legacy, Eno Yotunji, that is 50 years old, 5 decades old, when other intentional communities of color didn't manage to survive. And from there we would, you know, remember all of our people. Boboy dilemi, iyan la baban la mi. You know, I myself very fortunate, blessed, and highly favored. Hundreds. It would take up the entire 90 minutes if I tried to call the names of all the mothers and fathers and aunties and grandmothers, grandfathers, and relations in my family that I went to church with. I know how they fried chicken go. I know how they lemonade or iced tea goes on Sunday. Amazing. So I call them in because their blood is still warm in my veins. And what it is that I am inspired to share with this community tonight comes from that place, comes from how they raised me and how they taught me. So we welcome them into the conversation. The chief that we spoke of, well, is a mutual friend of both Jonathan and myself. And that would be Chief Olaitan. And we couldn't help but bring him in because we're about to come to his year and day, to his ascension. And although we miss him desperately, desperately every day, then who is it that would deny one from dropping the physical roles of illness and pain to ascend into all that is, into the light. We just wouldn't. even though tears well in our eyes, we miss them so much. Our good friends, we were just talking about Bale, tall man. I don't know that you got to meet him, but you know a lot of his children there. You've seen all the tall children, the Oye Woles. Bale Oye Wole left and made his ascension maybe 5 years ago tomorrow. So Ogun priest, he's very much on our mind. And of course, if we think of Bale, we think of Iyalode Akinshegun, his wife, the mother of those same children. And so this is what we do when we enter and anchor ourselves like that big, we're going to talk a little bit later, another drop about this table that we find our seat at, or the table that we are calling others to sit at, or the global table. We, the traditional and the priests, will always, 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 always welcome and call in those who have preceded us and gone to the other side and are now our aides. Your treat, my pleasure, is to have Jonathan do it the musical way. And of course, he has an amazing song for the ancestors. And I'm going to just pinch a little story in here, Jonathan, because I think it's worth telling. And Tracy and I think about a lot of times, what are the little stories that we can get in, you know, for after I'm gone, for when I'm an ancestor, and people look back and say, what were those little things that made her relationships with people so special? Well, Jonathan and I met at a grief ritual. Isn't that something to be able to say right now, with almost 250,000 people dead, and the level of grief that we are having to deal with in our world in order to just get to next year. But 3 days had gone by, and I saw Santos there with young baby and young woman, and because I was anchoring a great ancestral mother, Malidoma Some's wife, Sombofu, who is now an ancestor herself, my attentions were very much about anchoring her spiritually for what she was taking on with these pretty much 200 plus white folks in the room that was fitting to let out all of their grief and their tears and things like that. So needless to say, Santos and I didn't get a lot of conversation. And at the end of the hour, I think it was Nikki Ann who had actually sponsored it, asked Santos to come up to the room and give us a song. And I was way at the back of the room thinking about how to like pack up my stuff and get ready to go. And the song you're about to hear now just changed the course of my life. It changed the course of my life till I couldn't wait till he was finished singing it so I could ask if there was a CD. Could I have it? I was just so blessed by it. And I'm blessed every time I hear it, Jonathan.
I thank you for that. I thank you. I do play big time for that one. So I'm going to invite everybody to take a breath with me because I need it. So if you would just, you know, we've taken a lot. We've stepped into a new dimension of sacred, brave space. And let's just take a big inhale in through our nose and let it all go. One more time, breathe in. When you feel like you can't take any more in, hold it for a second and let it all out. And this time, take a nice big breath in. And as you're breathing in, I want you to smile. Just because you're here and you're able to breathe. And as you exhale, smile into all of those people that are you. Your epigenetic memory, your cellular memory, your grandmothers, your grandfathers, your mothers, your fathers, your aunties, your cousins, your mentors, your dear friends, all of those who have made you through impression and or through DNA who you are. So we're talking about our ancestors. And I just invite you to keep them with you this whole time because we're in a new world. And it's going to take us consulting with our ancestors to have brave conversations with people that don't know how they feel right now. or with people that strongly disagree or strongly agree, and we're just agreeing in a disagreeable way. Whatever it is, we're gonna need our ancestors. So, y'all ready? Calling on our ancestors, ancestors. This is for our ancestors, ancestors. Calling on our ancestors, ancestors. 'Cause we need your voice in this great time of shifting. Can we regain our connection? That energy, go back, go forward, go back, to move ahead. Calling on our ancestors, ancestors. Y'all can help me out. This is for yep, that's how it goes. Calling on our ancestors, ancestors. 'Cause we need your voice. That connection, that grandmama smile, that story about back in the day, oh, from your grandpa, your aunties, your cousins, everyone in your family tree. Oh, they're all right here beside you. From the leaves to the branches down to the roots. Oh, it's only you. Calling on our ancestors, ancestors. This is for our, right? Calling on our ancestors. 'Cause we need your voice. So we give thanks for those that sowed so that we could reap. We give thanks for those that dug the well so that we could drink. We give thanks and know that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and thus we can see far across the cosmos. So, in the spirit of boldness and bravery and healing, the great visionaries of Marvin Gaye, James Brown, Sam Cooke, Nina Simone, Harriet Tubman, Mansa Musa, Abu Bakari, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Queen Yaa Santua, Octavia Butler, James Baldwin, all those that have given their life for freedom, for justice, have given their life in love. We say Ashe, we welcome you into this space, we welcome your wisdom into this space, and it is my understanding that we all started in the same place, and for some beautiful reason in the universe, we're here right now together. So who are your people? Who are your ancestors? Who are coming to sit at the table with you for this conversation, for this transformation? Just call them, name them into the space, as we say, and welcome them with Amen, or maybe Amin, or maybe an Aho, or Ashe. We're calling you in. We're calling you in. We're calling you in. We're calling you in. Hey, rhythm in the doodle bar I go. Are you listening? Hey, rhythm in the song bar I go. Are you listening? Hey, rhythm in the kinkany I go. Are you listening? Talk to us on the djembe, 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 djembe. Hey, talk to us on those 808s. Talk to us on those MPCs. Talk to us on these guitar strings. We need you to ride this beat, please. Help me out. Call it Nana. This is for our ancestors, ancestors. Say like you mean it. Our ancestors, ancestors. Cause we need you, boy. Cause we need you, boy. So we're just right on the other side of, you know, what many celebrate as Dia de los Muertos, in the season of Oya, of wise women, Samhain, you know, it's that time where we remember our ancestors. So yeah, we're all here now. What we gonna talk about?
Yeah, that's what happens is the veils get thin, you know, and they come close. And it's a beautiful thing, you know, just as I was saying as we were going into your song, that that's what brings them close is you know, one sister friend, Teeny Boo, just really was remembering, you know, the morning that her Baba left Atlanta. And of course, you know, do we ever know when we're looking at someone, which is a great way to make the pivotal turn into the next part of this conversation. Do we ever know when we have said our farewells or okay then, see you later, that may in fact be the last time that we see them in a physical presence, and then we have to make that adjustment to feeling and seeing them in the energy form without those physical robes. So it's a welcoming time. That's where we are in this next little part of the gathering this evening in our container, is to welcome in the Changemaker. I tell you what, I just between yesterday and today, because I was making it a point, was a little busy down there over the Samhain All Hallows weekend in Toomsboro with those divine Black children that call themselves building now Freedom, Georgia, a whole town over the weekend. So I didn't get to see the kickoff of this Changemaker series, which we're in now, which came this past Saturday night. We're recording early, and it was Byron Ballard, but I've known Byron Ballard for two plus decades, and what a stout, and have her books, and I was like, okay, that is the one to set the tone for us. And of course, animism and knowing the spirit of all things, not just what we learned about Casper the Friendly Ghost or Dia de la Muertes, or if we saw Coco. What do we really know in that world as change makers, able to, you know, and I said this early on in 2020, and it proved itself true, is that this would be a year where we had to learn how to hold many, many, many truths at the same time. Some that we agree with and some that we don't agree with. But I think what's going on in our world, and that's what we're going to talk about in this next little piece here, is that, you know, we've come through a year of who even would have thought we would have ever been in this level of deception. And on a recent BIPOC call, as we were doing the what you call it, the debriefing or the downloading a couple of days later, what I offered to the group, and again, being one of maybe 3 BIPOC people on a call of maybe 40 folks, I reflected that I watched the expressions on the faces of many of those Europeans and saw how shocked they were, to recognize we were being presented from the Arquat people, 3 Native American people who were bringing them some codes of conduct. Like eventually Santos and I hope to step into this realm with various communities of color so that we can have some really good conversations about, like, all right, we've been waiting 400 years to have the conversation about our equality and our sameness and our differences. And now did we even really have any rehearsal to what it is we want to say? So what I noticed as they were receiving, because they took them minute by minute through many of the massacres and what really happened when they let the people out of jail in Europe and they showed up over here. They took them from, oh, look through our lands. Hear the stories that our parents and grandparents told us about the plight of red people when it is you arrived at our shores, saying that, you know, you was going to help and you had so much to learn from us about planting seeds and all like that. And of course, you know, here we are now as you are watching this presentation a few days after that so-called treaty, first dinner, supper with the Pilgrims and the Indians, which again, you know, and it was just shocking. Many of these poor little rich white people, privileged people had tears. And you can only go so far if you've done your work through White Fragility or D'Angelo's work and these types of things, and say, oh yeah, that was terrible, just terrible, 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 terrible. We don't know what we're going to do about our ancestors. That was just terrible. The way they treated the red people, the way they treated the black people. But the bigger point, now that we have lived through a Trump era, we have lived through a government in full on corruption, tell you anything or don't tell you anything at all, the power that deception has if we allow ourselves to give into it or to be fed by it. And I guess we went here in the welcoming for a number of reasons. Number one, our part of roadmaps to bridge building, peacemaking, change making. Are you really ready to evolve into a conscious agent of change? And what does that mean? What does that mean? People want to do tune-ups and oil changes in their cars, but guess what? If you don't have the filter or all the parts that you need to do the tune-up or the oil change, it won't happen. And so Santos and I are here this evening to ask a few questions in this format, and then we're gonna take it on. We realize that if you answer us or give us some feedback on it, you're only gonna do it in the chat room here tonight, but we are gonna come back to some follow-up Zoom calls where we can really say, yeah, you know, you asked a couple of really good questions that I wanted to take in here and kind of chew it around and sit on it and pray on it a little bit and see what I came up with. And one of those questions, before I kick it back to Jonathan, who I think has a very, very potent question, you know, and this came up, I remember that it was my college roommate and a friend of 47 years, and who can say that I was on a radio show in New York with her on Monday night. And we were talking, we were both, she became a minister, Reverend Granetta, I became a traditional African priest. We're both laughing, we're both Pisces, but the truth in the matter is that the medicine that we are sharing with you and sharing with the people that we serve says, first of all, you can't really be trying to give out nothing you're not in possession of yourself. Like, that's problematic. And so if it is that you say you're ready, your resiliency is ready, you know that you're resilient, you know what you can depend upon yourself for. And a minute ago, that was freedom and independence, but that's kind of like a whole nother section of the conversation maybe we'll get to as we go toward the coming Aquarian age and close out this Piscean age. But right here, right now, present time, do you have patience? Do you have the ability to dismantle your own triggers? We're only given over to these wildfires of sacred rage when we don't have the ability to dismantle the trigger. And the further that Grenetta and I got into the conversation, we kept digging at it. We kept digging at, well, how many are just trapped or stuck by their own fear, the false evidence of things appearing real. Like Drum out here, you know, with the lawsuits, and maybe he'll go to the Supreme Court and all like that. See what I'm saying? False evidence of things appearing real. You could just look at it and your inner truth and what you know say, that's not real, boo. Don't fall for the hype. Like Public Enemy said, please don't fall for the hype. Because we have to separate the truth from the deception moving forward. And so we welcome you into that space. And Jonathan, we're lending it back to you. As I was making the notes on this particular segment, I thought all around this conversation that you're going to go into after you give us some good breath work to make us stabilize, to get into having the hard conversations, is I thought about the many seats at different tables that I've been invited to, and which of those tables was I welcomed at the very jump, and which of those tables did I sit at a long time but I never felt welcomed. So welcome is a big word, and I hope, my prayer, grandmother of 12, great grandmother of 3, I hope going forward that our welcoming, the tool of welcoming, will be in all of our medicine bags, because it either is or it ain't. You see, part of that authenticity that we're moving into right now is like, if you really don't feel welcoming, that's okay too. Thank you for your candor. But all this people please and pretend, put on the smile and act like you're welcoming, probably not. We're probably going to let that go with the close of the Piscean age. Yeah, so what you got for us? You got to do more out of your musical bag or your Tai Chi bag. You're just so full of talent, my man. What do we do next?
I appreciate you. I'm going to always take a breath and invite us to breathe. Inhaling and letting it all go. I am going to invite us to think about community and what does that even mean. Many are familiar with the beloved community. When I think of community, I think of common and unity, those two words, and putting them together. And in some of the work that I share in the Changing the World by Changing Me curriculum, I look at, who do you identify as your, people that are on your team, people that are showing up for you, people that, you're borrowing whatever it is that you need on your table. You're going, knocking on their door. You might need jumper cables, whatever it may be. Who's on your team? And then who is in your village? Those are the folks that maybe you don't get to see on a weekly basis, but before the month's out, you've made a phone call or you've just checked on them. And it's even more relevant now and up with this time of distance and communicating through FaceTime, or Zoom, or Hangouts, and all those things. Who are you checking on? Who are you making sure is okay? Because if you haven't spoke to them in a month's time, they might not be. You love them no less, but they might not be in your village. And then when I come to your community, everyone that you feel you have a sense of kinship, connection to. Everybody that loves chocolate, we in deep community. Everybody that loves, music, laughter, culture, nature, you would be in community with them. If you love basketball, you're connected to everybody who plays ball. And then we get to that place where, who's not in your community? He's like, what? Take that over there. So I just want you to think about those things and invite you to grab if you don't already have some water, if you don't already have some tea, you know, a little ginger floating in here. And if you don't have a notepad, you know, please take a moment to go grab a notepad, hydrate yourself, take care of yourself, move your body how you need to. And I'm just gonna give this short poem as we think about those things. Who's on your immediate team? Knowing that Iya talked about change makers, Mama Sangoma spoke about change makers, that it starts with the self, you know. And so you know that you're on your own team, but who's on your team? Who are you calling, you know, for that support? Identify those people. And then next, who is in your village? You're gonna check in with these people monthly and extend that visualization to who's in your community, whatever that may be. You love soccer, you love quilting, you crafts work, you work out, you go to the gun range, you like earth skills, whatever that might be, that's your community. And then I want you to think about who's not in your community. Who comes to mind when you say they're not in my community? And I'm gonna give this poem while you make any adjustments you need to. Common unity, common unity, common unity, common unity, community, the space between you and me, the fibers of my irises, the same that make your heart beat. So see, you should love me. Separation due to ego molecules, time, space, perception of this reality. Let's agree to disagree to get into this 5D. Synergistically and fight back corporate attack on our humanity. Be naturally simply by breathing. Mother Earth just wants to hold you, play in her apothecary. We need true soldiers to stand in solidarity, man. It amazes me. Consumption, what's your function? Keeping us addicted, creating fear of abundance when I am because we are. I am because we are. Each one teach one. When you shine, I shine. Lift as you climb. Common unity, community. It's the space between you and me. The fibers of my irises, the same that make your heart beat. So see, we should love we. Community. And I'm just gonna invite you to take 3 deep breaths, thinking about community. And if you can visualize it, go ahead. If you can draw it out, just draw you a circle. As you inhale, or if you're doing it visually, just fill that circle with some folks that come to mind that are in your community. Take another breath, because we gotta see it. We gotta feel it. We gotta achieve with all of our senses. Exhale. Another inhale. And just smile into your community as you exhale. Who's not in your community right now? Who did you identify? Who did you draw outside of that circle? Every time I get to share this, I'm speaking to me when I say, if they're on the planet Earth, we're in community. Dang, I'm stuck. We stuck. And then some people looking at me like, ooh, that dude. You know, but we came here to learn. We came here to become great ancestors and learn all the lessons that we came to learn in this lifetime. And yeah, there's some people that showed up to help us with our lessons in a very harmonious way in community. And there's some folks that came to teach us through another way. And that's just where we are right now at this time, this season, this month. Started a certain kind of way. And as we close out the month, you know, it's been a few days since folks traditionally would come together for gratitude. You know, we've taken the energy and had to make it our own from you know, from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day to Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving. But however it plays out, folks usually come together. You know, we just come and see each other. And now it's different. We got to make some hard choices. Can we go see Auntie? Can we go see Mama? Can we risk that? So the world is a very different place, and it's important to take inventory of who's in our community and who, quote unquote, is not. Because the reality is that we're all in community. Now, yes, we can practice boundaries. If you want to, you know, tap in for some Tai Chi or, you know, some Kung Fu, some mindfulness to protect ourselves. Now is definitely that time to be centered in our clarity around those boundaries with one another. But I'm just going to talk about, through song and through word, a seat at the table. Who did you invite over? Who ate with you? Who shared a meal with you? Did you host? Did you go somewhere? Did y'all have gratitude day with loved ones virtually? Did you hold your dish up to the camera? And there's your table, and then there's the world table. It's very blatant that, and you used the word BIPOC, and you know, well, I was like, well, what is that? What does that mean? Because it's a very privileged, you know, to throw the acronyms and have these conversations. If you're living the experience, you probably don't have the opportunity or the privilege to know the definition of these words. But Black, Indigenous, and people of color, which is very much not the same thing. And you can, again, see E.I. or myself if you want to find some resources or learn more about what are we talking about. But yeah, being in community and having your table, and many people don't have a table, and we thrive. We thrive eating with our hands, getting all that seasoning and that spice. Many people are growing their own food. Many people are finding ways, with or without a table, with or without chairs, with or without utensils, to still make it work. I am currently based on Ohlone land, coming from Cherokee land in North Carolina, Ohlone land here in California, in the Bay Area. I have never seen so many unhoused people in tents. That happened way before this pandemic. And so at this time, folks want their own table. And if we talk about community, we all need representation at the world table. How do we all sit down and make sure that there was enough room? Who got the call? Who got the text? Who got the email? Who intentionally you did not invite? Who couldn't make it because they physically were not able? Who sent their representatives or their children? You know, who got to set the menu? Who was outside on the cell phone handling business and not really present? Were the elders represented? Did the children have the children's table? And y'all know the kids' table's over there. Y'all go sit outside. We about to have this grown-up thing. How did it go for you? What is your culture, and how do you include the people that you love? But then how do you hold the space for the world table and making sure that somebody that has a strong contrasting or balancing worldview and perspective as you is there, so that you cannot just be blowing smoke? I don't know if I could, this GreenSong, I don't know if I could. I'm not. Okay. Yeah. So that's the opportunity for you to just write that, to just take a moment to just draw that circle. Think about who's in your community, who's in your village, who's on your team, on the inside, who's not on the inside, draw them on the outside. And then when you finish, I'm gonna be finished with the song and I'll tell you what's next. Just give you a snippet. It's called Want What You Need. And is this an exclusive GreenSong drop? You can't find it anywhere. So you gotta keep up with GreenSong to get it. We are so abundant, there is nothing we can't have. I won't let limiting beliefs keep me stuck all in the past. I want what's good for my body, my mind, and my soul. Leaving lack and love's desires, fill my needs so I may grow and just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, Jay. Want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want to say. Just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, yeah. Want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it. So there's enough for you, that's right. There's enough for me too, that's right. There's enough for all the people suffering. There's enough for all the countries warring. There's enough for all the babies crying. And there's enough for all the people dying. There's enough for you, that's right. There's enough for me too, that's right. There's enough for all the people suffering. There's enough for all the countries warring. And there's enough for all the babies crying. And there's enough for all my people dying when we just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it. Just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, yeah. Just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, yeah. Want what you need. You can have it, what you want, how you oh. Want what you need. Want what you need. Want what you need. So you're finished with your circle. You've drawn all the people that you love, all the people you're in deep community with on the inside. You've drawn who's not on the inside, who's not a part of your community on the outside of your circle. May my wants not harm your needs, and may my needs flow freely. So we're all connected through the same strings, and we're all sharing the same dream. May my wants not harm your needs, and may my needs flow freely. We're all sharing the same dream, and we're all connected through the same strings. Oh, and we just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, yeah. Want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want to say. Just want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, yeah. Want what you need. You can have what you want, how you want it, yeah. Down, 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 down. And so now is when you draw that circle that maybe it doesn't even fit on your page. You have your community on the inside. You have who's not at your table on the outside. Now I want you to draw a nice big circle around everything, everybody. We're all connected through the same strings. And how do we get representation at this table to really have the conversations that T.E.A. has opened the way for all of our ancestors to sit with us, so we can have some real talk and make some real progress. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're my friend. Every time I am honest to God, I say, you know, how blessed are you to have friends that daggone, you know, it's not so much. I had so many experiences while you were singing. By the way, that's a new song. And yes, by the way, we urgently are awaiting your second CD. But that's why that is the thing that I think in the big intersection of destiny that drew our souls back together in this particular lifetime, that you know, I've been a groupie already long ago, 50 years ago, groupie. Yeah, done it, been there, done it. I sold the t-shirt. And so now when we are blessed to have friends such as yourself that are really, really kind of chiming in, going into your medicine cabinet of another person. That's where I live, because I know that music is my medicine. I know that, you know, that common unity, just throwing it, what you call it, spitting at the mic or something like that. When y'all do that, that it gives us an opportunity to ask ourselves the difficult questions. And so that would look like, yes, I know my kindred, my beloved kindred of Sangoma. And when I move out of that circle, well, yeah, I probably wouldn't throw, you know, an invitation to the Proud Boys or the KKK or, you know, I just, like, they wouldn't be in my circle. But in this conversation of bridge building, peacemaking, the global community, the fact is, the facts on the table are whatever life, what you call it, climate change or climatic thing that we're going to deal with, just like this pandemic is not, you know, partial to Republicans or Democrats. It doesn't really care how politically correct or non-correct you are. Now, it does have a chosen group, which unfortunately are people of color or people of African descent, because we have already lived through an amazing history in the breakdown of our own physical body and our own immune system and things that we generationally brought to the table that makes us weak and susceptible to a pandemic. But by and large, when we look at that largest circle that you asked us to draw at the end, how do we begin to be in relationship to our global family? And it definitely, I listen well. I love it when it's on a CD, so that as I do with your first CD, I could just replay it 100 times and listen and listen and listen again, because you know, I realize who I am as a freelance worker for God. I realize that I have no more fear of a proud boy than I did the young man who drove into the Florida Earthskills with the big, you know, 90-foot wide Confederate flag on his truck. And my mind would say, you need to sit down and talk to him. And I did. And I did. I was able to invite him to come right here. Yo, I'm so glad you're here. That's what I greeted him with. I knew by your flag that I was waiting to have this conversation with you. Because I know your flag in one way and you know your flag in another way. And what could keep us apart or bring us to a place of misunderstanding or assumption or whatever bad judgment with one another is what we don't say to each other about that flag right there. So why don't we sit down and have a conversation about it? And so as you were singing, I was thinking, no, you know, if I had the opportunity, I would not mind. You know, I'm not against inviting a proud boy to my table of gratitude. Not at all. Not at all. Because the way that they got to be a proud boy, number one, is that many people in their inner circle overlooked the pain in their body that was readily visible. We're so sure. That's how they got that way. That's how they got that way. And so to be able to sit down in the skin I'm in and say to them, tell me about you. Tell me about your truth. What's true for you? Because I don't want to take it from CNN. I don't want to take it from anyone else's mouth. I want you to tell me about where you live, your truth, what's right or wrong in your world. You see, and so it is so interesting because where, of course, I thought we would go, and again, this is what's going to make you and I, what we call it, the Gateway Series. You and I develop this ongoing conversation, and I hope we do, or maybe it is in the season of the Raven. We're going to announce it. By the way, we've already passed our halfway point, and let me just say that we're well over it. But she'll still give us the 15 minutes to go to the last part. But we have to continue these conversations because we all have different truths. And when we look at the by and the large of it, I'm between and betwixt, and I'm being absolutely honest with you in this moment. It's like there is a part of me that, oh my gosh, what a homecoming down in Toomsboro and Freedom, Georgia, to finally be in the wood and with tents and around a campfire with all people that look like me. Can you imagine after 35 years of running to the camps where there was no one else that looked like me? So it's awesome to have that. And yet, and still, the love and the relationships and the truth and the beauty of real, irregardless of skin color, that exists in my beloved kindred that I have known for 35 years isn't any more diminished because I now have this tribe that looks like me. I've always, through my whole life, had Oyotunji. It didn't make a difference. So my question, and come with what you're gonna bring, but here's the question I got for you because I had to ask it, is like, is there gonna be a period of segregation where the communities are able to heal in and of themselves before we really embrace that global family? All right, I laid it out there.
Man, it makes me want to give another song.
You could.
and you know, I really, that was really powerful as we open with grandmother Elspeth, and just speaking, we're hearing and learning her perspective, and my mother was born in Waynesboro, Mississippi. My mother's people are coming from Mississippi and Womack Hill, Mobile, Alabama. So, my grandmother was a little girl in Mississippi when Emmett Till body was recovered. And that is in her cellular memory. And so the conversations that I would love to have with my grandmother, I can understand why we're not able to have those conversations. And I imagine on the other side of it, because violence to another, as you say, Natty Lovejoy's, is violence to yourself. And so I can only imagine, folks that have been suffering from inflicting violence on others, that what does that conversation look like with your ancestors? What does that conversation look like with your elders? Self-preservation being one of the first laws. No one is, I'm jumping ahead. And, when we get into these conversations about repairing nations or reparations, or 40 acres and a mule or equity, all of these steps, nobody wants to feel like they're losing or have to give up something that they put sweat equity into, or it's just a human spiritual experience, the experience of attachment to apology and attachment to material things. So you dropped the boom, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful in this container because it's quite courageous that we're here in this space, in this container, to have this conversation. As we look at the lineup, we look at who else is here, and we look at the space that we're seeking to hold, to open that gate for more faces that look like me, more faces that look like you, more voices, hearts, and beautiful people to be able to communicate with other beautiful people like everybody that's here at GreenSong. And so you said, are we going through, is it going to be a time of segregation? And my father is from Puerto Rico. from what I know, his father's father came from Spain, and his father's mother was an African woman. And if you understand, the culture throughout the diaspora and the Caribbean, this, trinity of the indigenous, the African, and the European, how do you segregate that? How do you separate that? And then how do you segregate
mixed families?
So many things.
Yeah.
And at the same time, because a dear brother that I'm just going to bring into the conversation, shout out Fahim Hanna. He's a very huge teacher in my life, as a good brother, a good friend, and says, black is a label and white is a label. I've heard Tim Wise echo this. I've heard many talk about, where there are no white people, there are no black people. Where are your ancestors from? Where do you come from? What land did you steward? What land did you incarnate on? And at the same time, black is a consciousness. It is indeed a consciousness, and whiteness is indeed a consciousness. And so as we do need that sacred time and space to heal with self and with those that we can feel that affinity to in our respective communities, whatever that may look like. Bringing in the 4 agreements, be impeccable. Oh, I'm messing up. Be impeccable with your word. Always do your best. Help me out.
Show up, be your best self. Show up as your best self. Yeah,
no assumptions. No assumptions. No assumptions. No judgment. No judgment. No assumptions. Yes, but it's gonna take that type of work to, yes, honor that even in your respective community, in this time of the emotional washing machine for everybody on the whole entire planet, if you're in SARS in Nigeria, wherever you are on the planet, keep moving in that integrity and understanding, yes, people need, in the spirit of El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, what can we do? How can we get involved? I'm here in Oakland, Legacy of the Black Panthers. What can we do? You will see all of the different groups standing in solidarity, going from being an ally, to being an activist, to being, being a collaborator, to actually fully embodying whatever it is that can be offered. So yeah, I've done it many a time. I've taken my space to heal in the consciousness that I need to heal in. And then how do we come back together? I am going to very spirit led. The last song that I shared, I'm pausing in the middle of it because I'm literally hearing things as I'm singing. I'm like, what? So, this is not, I'm grateful for this platform here because sometimes I do desire to be a dynamic performer, and sometimes I just want to perform. But when we invite all these ancestors, somebody watching in the past and the present and the future, somebody needs to hear something, and I'm hearing it, and I'm like, change the lyrics. So that's what often happens, and I'm grateful for the intimacy. Even though we're distant, I'm grateful for this intimacy. So yeah, I'm just gonna drop a couple of words, just a couple of words from this song, because you spoke about the bridge. We all got here. We all showed up into this container, into this brave, sacred space. And, we're looking at community. We're looking at the roads. We're looking at the bridges. We're looking at the tools that we need to come together. But we also have to understand, yes, where our collective psyche is, but lest we not forget that healing for you might look differently than healing for me. And I don't want to gloss over, because it's still here. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And unfortunately, again, we could go
a long time. 100 names on that list since May.
So how did we get here? But first, where are we? What's the underlying layer with Black folks, with folks of color? And the grace, the respect, the offerings that have to be made to even have a conversation. I'll breathe for you, you'll breathe through me. We'll breathe for you, we'll breathe for you. And know this hatred won't settle in my lungs, 'cause I choose love, and I choose love. 'Cause what you say and what you do has gotta add up, or it ain't real. And what you say and how you feel has gotta add up, oh, it ain't real. I'll be a warrior for love, 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 for my people, for my culture, for my family, for our healing, for my people, for our culture, for humanity, for our freedom. I'll breathe for you, you'll breathe through me. We'll breathe for you, we'll breathe for you. And know this hatred won't settle in my lungs. I choose love, I choose love. Be a warrior for love. So how do we hold space for ourselves? How do we hold space for our family, our village, our community? And how do we also hold space for humanity and the planet? In every breath, nobody's off the hook. That's the charge of being a warrior for love.
Yeah, reminds me of Sade's Soldier of Love.
Shout out Sade.
Shout out Sade, yeah. Yeah, but whenever I need to feel that, you know, I feel that. And of course, you know, you're familiar on our website and all over the place. We have lighthouses and you know, we just feel like light and love pushes back the darkness. And sometimes we feel that negativity or that darkness enclosing on us or on our sense of common unity, and we get stuck in this place of isolation, and particularly now in this time through COVID. But that's what we have to remember, you know. And it gets back to the beginning. It is always that 360, because there's not a day go by or a teaching that comes or a Zoom call that comes that the words and the wisdoms that were dropped on me by the people who raised me literally carries me through, you know. And they would always tell you, you know, this too shall pass, or they would just give you that way to know you will get across that bridge. You will walk through the brave, sacred space to do it. You don't come from, and when I've had people challenge me, I said, no, I don't come from people like that. I pretty much don't come from people that back down or turn away from a challenge, okay? We may hit a pause and develop a strategic plan, but just like back down, throw in the towel, give up, no, that's the wrong family. No, I don't even come from people like that. And so, of course, in that, you know, it's just so many. And I was thinking that as you were talking, like you say, lots and lots and lots of ancestors speaking and talking in our heads. For number one, that, you know, we have a million conversations yet to have. And there's that, because we've hit so many points, and I'm so thankful to have the ability to go back in to YouTube and watch this again, to watch some of the points that we are bringing up of how to do this. Because, yes, this is a much larger beginning, middle, and end to the progression that we are going to make if we are going to do it in complete candor. You know, as you were going into that song, I was reminiscing again of Granetta and I's conversation on Monday evening on the radio station, which thank God you can go to YouTube and look at. And she was saying, you know, white people don't talk with each other around themselves like they talk to us. And the same would be true in people of color spaces. Same is true in a nail shop. They really want to say some things, you know, that they don't want everybody in the room in it, or hit Korean, Vietnamese, or whatever language they speak. And that is a ticket that in what you were bringing, what you were offering in this, you know, how to open more and really allow love to be colorless and unconditional and free with itself so it can do the work. We're going to have to recognize and own up and acknowledge some of those places in which we are one face, one way over here in our own group and another way out there to the world, because the same thing that we're asking for and asking for that seat at certain tables is the same thing that we're perpetuating, that we never get there. Or if we do get there, we'll have carried so much baggage from who we are, when we was NAACP, when we was this, when we was that, you know. And I think it was Grandmother Elspeth at the beginning of this that said that put that out there in that present, or no, maybe it was Byron. I've been listening to so much, you can tell. But that present moment says that no matter where we have been in our past, the Emmett Tills, the George Floyds, the horrific, a Holocaust, a wounded knee. I mean, just the horrific road that we came from, that in some people's minds was once great. I don't know, maybe that lives on the back of John Wayne. I don't even know where that lives. When the slogan first came out, I tried to figure it out. And here we are in the present, gathering all the information in the room, as you and I have done this evening, and asking the hard questions and reminding people to breathe and hydrate themselves as they do it, and then being humble with our way toward the future, making no assumptions. I'm so glad you brought up those 4 agreements, because what do we need to move forward, really?
I'm curious. I'm very present with you. I'm curious. I know our time is we're getting close.
Yeah, we're getting close.
We're getting close. I would love to go into, you know, maybe offer some solutions, and, you know, just visualizing, you know, getting there. And as you invited us all to this gathering, all of the best parts of ourselves showed up, as well as our ancestors. You know, I'd love for you to, you know, share that sacred way of closing it. And you know, I'm grateful, because I mean, you know, because this is an authentic conversation between dear friends that we're sharing with you all, but as well as someone that I truly am grateful as a cultural anchor, as my own personal, you know, teacher, and very much a guide, and just dynamic human being, you know, from Florida to Maine and coast to coast, like, you know, and around the world. So we, you know, so saying this is speaking to my friend and sharing this conversation amongst friends. I do hope that we can become that. Is anything that I'm offering for anyone, I'm answering in myself. And so there's things that you've said, there's things that have come up through me. Maybe there's things in the chat that are like, oh, I wasn't like, wow, I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of stuck right there, you know, especially in these multicultural spaces. Oh, man, the universe was like, yeah, you need to,
Yeah, that's what that. We're just turning it all upside down.
Okay, in these multicultural spaces, honoring that there are not everybody's ancestors is going to want to show up and talk to each other. That some conversations have to be had when you're working and moving with the village, and then you're giving instruction and guidance on how to be a representative at that world table, and so that line within self, within one's own self integrity, that yin and that yang, we have to constantly be better people in order to be real clear on that and understand, why am I communicating it this way, like this, and why over here is, my language gonna be a little spicy, my movement's gonna be like, know what I'm saying? And then they was like this, and I was like, yo, get the fuck out of here, man. What? Because that is an integral tool that we've used to cope and survive in code switching, but also translating. But energy doesn't lie. Energy doesn't lie. I can smile all day, but if my energy is sour, forget about it. And so, how do we just walk that line of being better people as we're here in the present? I was speaking to my mother right at election time. She shared, and see, now I'm just talking about my mama, so I'm all comfortable. But my mama said, my mama calls me Jonathan. The cool me wants to be, I'm Santossoul and my ego titles, but I'm Jonathan too. My mama said she was on the subway platform and folks threw coffee on each other. So, it's not this camp and that camp. It's who we're standing next to at any given moment, at any given time. And it's really ourselves. It's really who we are with ourselves. It doesn't have to be in the extremes of, this group or that group. It's literally, how do we stand with ourselves? How can we be better human beings? That's the only way. This time demands that we're better. So,
Yeah. You're right to say so. I thank you so much for saying that. As I say, I'm going to watch it, the repeat of it. I'm thankful we're about 5 minutes, maybe 4, maybe 3. But lots of where you can reach Santos Soul, mastering Tai Chi. I'm going to get my grandson involved next week. And so that we feel that we're moving these energies as we go into the winter cave of the bear. But
give me whatever a bear looks like to you. Just, you know what I'm saying? Roar, stretch, play with it. Just if you've been watching this, if you've been sitting here, make some noise.
Make some noise, and keep it moving, which was the other thing I told the young lady, besides breath, is that you cannot pull off the side of the road when the rainstorm is so intense that your sight might be challenged. Her father told her, don't you dare pull off the side of the road. And she continued driving on, and 10 minutes later, she was in the sunshine. Her father said, well, what do you think those people back there sitting on the side of the road still in the storm are doing? And so we have to keep it moving, energetically, physically, spiritually, mentally. But I'm really, really, really glad you said it, because you and I know the experiences that we have had in Oyotunji with various levels of that one face and the other face. And so, and not just Oyotunji, but I'm just saying as a point of relationship recently for me to move through the question that I'm asking you, do we remain segregated to develop enough healing to be brave enough to take on the other communities whose ancestors don't want to come to the conversation, Or do we just recognize that showing up as our best selves mean that you wouldn't even have people in the same family or the same community issuing out a beat down or cursing at one another or just being all out straight crazy with one another because
the self-worth.
family, right? Family, right? Yeah.
Hey, my family, hey, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, off the chain. Off the chain. So, you know, on the extended thing, I did come across this thing, whiteaccomplices.org. And I'm just naming, you know, and we ain't got, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whiteaccomplices.org. You can do your homework, you can read up and just, you know, look at how to position self in a broader context. But as you were saying, you know, on a family level and just on a personal level, you know, we got to bring our A game.
Yeah, we definitely do. And so since we are minutes in, I'm knowing that I will close it out. I will usher out the different 4 directions so that we can reopen the container. It is fair to say that you and I will do our homework. We always do. So we're going to come back and see how we feel after we look at this with a little distance and a hole, and we say, okay, so what's the next step? What are the pathways forward? And then Tracy, our wonderful machine.
Shout out Earth Mama. Shout out Earth Mama
Shout
Tracy.
out Earth Mama.
Shout out
for
Earth Mama
holding
Tracy.
it down, for
Yes,
even
for
anchoring these amazing, amazing Changemaker series. But as they show up on YouTube, then she tells us that there will be directions for people like Hansel and Gretel to follow the breadcrumbs. And we encourage you, certainly Santos and I encourage you, because we need to keep having the conversations, not just be in love with the sound of our voice, but because we need to.
Kindred of Sangoma, Season of the Raven, November 24th to December 29th.
Yep.
And Team Change the World by Change Me.
You triggered something really interesting for me in that closing, that the questions popped this way. They said, well, yes, you could release the North Star and General Tubman and all the ancestors and the elders out in their presence. And we thank you so much for just anchoring us and giving us our groundedness in the realm of the earth, letting us be in our physical good and bad and hard and easy days of the earth school. We thank you for that. We thank you for that. And we thank the spirits of the West, whose gates we're tending right in this moment, that we could show ourselves something different in that place of introspection, in that place of the dreaming bear of fall. And that's what they said. A little bit of an answer is, and I've done it in Games for the Soul, is that look out to your headstone and try and read what it says. Look out to your future self that is 3 or 5 years in front of you, that already knows where you tripped and fell this winter as 2020 was given away to 2021, and feel all those emotions, because you know in the West, as they're leaving out, they then have tended our feelings, our emotions, our tears, the waters in our bodies. Okay, in the South, we are so thankful that the creativity and the inspiration and the trust and the truth that lives between the Santos and the Sangoma could temper this time of sacred rage and wildfires of people undisciplined, and bring them back to that good self, that best self, that 4 agreement self that is willing to do the work, that is willing to have common unity. So we thank you, all spirits and grandfathers and grandmothers of the South, for your fire ever present in us. And to the East, the thoughts that never end, the winged ones, the place of air and illumination and beginnings. We say, let us not lose faith. What do they say? They say, don't become weary in your well-doing. I'm trying to call the exact words of my ancestors, because I had so many, and they said that. They said, never become weary in your well-doing. And so in that place of the East, we thank you, and thank you again for always showing us a new beginning, showing us where that snake is eating its tail, the continuum of Dambala Wedo, that as we begin, so we end, and as we end, so we begin. And what a perfect way to leave. And that's just the perfect way to leave. And the above and the below and the within. And so I don't know what goodies you got on the guitar as we're going out. She'll edit it later.
I was just thinking, we have walked and journeyed to GreenSong, to this table, um, presiding grandmother Elspeth, and, set very graciously and thoroughly by Earth Mama Tracy Dees. Is How old is grandmother Elspeth?
90.
90.
Yep, this year she made her 90th birthday.
Okay. I just want to put some energy on that. I just want to put some energy towards that, and just send it out on celebration, because again, I came to this table. How many of us get to sit with a 90-year-old? And will you set a table like this when you're 90?
I
People
will.
Come and say, hey,
I will.
I imagine it will be a festival, a parade, and a whole series of, yes, a week-long celebration is what I expect from Ia Sangoma. But yeah, I just want to, on some Stevie Wonder style.
All right then.
Celebrate her life. Happy birthday to ya. 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 Happy birthday. Cheers to your life and to the legacy of the work that you're doing.
We love you, Grandmother Elspeth, and thank you for having us and providing a seat at your table. And thank you, Santos. Always a pleasure. In fact, I don't even know the last time I had 90 whole minutes in your presence.
Wow. Yeah, it's a different day. Thank you to everyone who's sitting with us. Take care of yourself. Stretch your bodies. Remember to breathe. And yeah, we'll see you very soon.
Yep, we will. All right, peace. Love.
Thank you so much. It was very, very inspiring. I'm kind of overwhelmed. Thinking about the music, Jonathan's music, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, the song "We Shall Overcome" is possibly the best weapon we have to end segregation. Music has a great deal of power to shift perspective. I was born in 1930, and in Alabama, situations were very, very different then, not only racially, but women's activities were limited. Much was limited back in those days. But my experiences were not all negative. As it happens, my mother had a maid. Mary came 3 days a week. Almost all women in our social strata had a helper that came in, and they were always Black women, just as yard helpers were Black men. And they didn't make a lot of money, I guess, then, but nobody had much money then. This was the 30s and into the 40s. However, in our case, when Mary, one of her kids needed dentistry work or something was a problem, she'd come to Daddy. She'd say, Mr. OJ, I need this. Can you help me? And as limited as we were in income, he was always tried to help with what was happening. If one of the boys got in trouble, he'd go down and talk to the police, not to get them out of the punishment, but to help them know that they were understood and cared for. 2 of our boys wound up going to college. There were other situations. When I went up to my grandmother's, there were a group of children that came and played with me. I didn't get to see them except when I was there. They were Black children. There didn't seem to be any difference between us. We all played together and were comfortable with each other. some other things that happened in the changing of the year between 47 and 48. I was one of the representatives from Alabama to the International Methodist Youth Conference held way up north in Cincinnati. And the way they had the girls, there were 15,000 young people from all over the world. And the Alabama contingent of girls were placed next to the Mississippi contingent of girls. They had triple deck bunks. It was not comfortable, and it was not very fancy. There were no black girls from Alabama, but there were some from Mississippi. And we were all so thrilled. We sat around and talked how we were going to change the world, how we respected each other and cared for each other. And we would make it all different when we got grown. Youth does this. Sometimes youth makes the changes. When my sister was married in a big, fancy wedding, her husband-to-be directed that his nurse and her husband be seated with his parents. His nurse was a black woman and her husband was a black man. It caused a lot of turmoil in our home church, but it was what we had been taught. It was the way Mother and Daddy taught us that when you grow up, there will be people you don't like, people you can't get along with. Do not judge on the color of their skin, the level of their education, or the clothes they're wearing. These were very strict tenets in our family. I think that for all of us, that was paternalism, and it is regarded as not a way to be, but it was not always negative in the South. I had friends, once I moved to New Jersey, I had friends who were black, a family, and they were from the South. They'd left the South when this man and woman were young, before their children were born. And what she said to me is, in the South, the law is against us, but individually, the people can be caring, black and white, together. I know my daddy always went hunting every year with his black friend and his college roommate. The three of them had a annual trek to the woods and all like that. This lady also said in the North, the law is with us, but the people don't care. We've got to make this different. And it cannot be any longer that skin color makes our decisions for us. I think we've had a very, I'll say enlightening again, because there's almost no other words for it. Thank you to both of our guests, and I thank you for your attention. Remember the online auction at greensongfestival.com. We're auctioning off some of Nibor's originals and prints and some of my soft sculpture work. Thank you.
6 humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story's told. Their dying fire in need of logs, the first man held his back. For of the faces round the fire, he noticed one was black. The next man looking across the way saw one not of his church, and couldn't bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. The third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use? To warm the idle rich. The rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store, and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. The black man's face bespoke revenge as the fire passed from his sight, for all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. The last man of this forlorn group did not accept for gain, giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. Their logs held tight in death's still hands was proof of human sin. They didn't die from the cold without, they died from the cold within.
In this great time of shifting, can we regain our connection? That energy, go back, to go forward, go back, to move